Welcome back to episode 4 of our data structure subseries. So in this video we're going to talk about iterators, and iterators are a programming concept that are used with data structures. So we need to look at least one data structure before we could talk about iterators. So an iterator is pretty much just a variable that iterates through each position in a container, with whatever data structure you're using or container. Anyways, an iterator basically takes on the value of each position in that container, and we can use that in our loops. So anyways, what we have been doing is creating a for loops, creating a counter, setting that to 0, and then checking whether that counter was less than the size of the array. And by the way, we're working in C++ right now. In C++, we don't have anything like Java where you can say my array dot length or whatever, because it's not an object of a class. But we do have a way to get the size, so we can just use the size of method and then just pass in that array like that, and that'll do the same thing. And then we can go ahead and increase I for each iteration through the loop, and now we can go ahead and print out the my array at that counter, whatever the counter is. So there we go, and we can end that, and there we go. So that'll just print out each letter. Now with iterators, an iterator, like I said, is just pretty much a variable, so we use it in the for loop. You can probably use it in the other loops. I'm not really sure on that, but anyways, we can say the type. So we're looping through char values, so we need our iter to be a char because it's taking on the value of those positions. So I usually just call it the first letter of that data type, so C in this case, and then you put the colon and then whatever container you want or data structure you want to be looping through. So we're looping through the array, my array, and now we can go ahead and do the same thing. We're just going to print out, instead of doing my array at that counter, we're just going to say C because it's taking on the value at each of those positions, and then we'll just print out the new line like that, and now we should see both of these things doing the same thing. So let's go ahead and compile this with g++ -c and then main.cpp, and then we'll go ahead and link it up by saying run me.exe for our executable, and then main.o, and we'll go ahead and run it here, and there you go. You can see it's printing out the same thing. So let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages. So with the actual for loop with the counter, you can actually use this counter to do arithmetic. So for whatever reason, if you wanted to like add numbers in here or whatever, you could do that and get different positions within the array. With the iterator, you're just going sequentially through each position one by one, and until there's no more positions, and it's taking on those values. So you can't really use a counter. I mean, you could do something like this. You could say a counter outside of the actual for loop and say set it to 0, and then increase it in here by saying like I++. You could do that, but that's kind of troublesome. It's just more code. Anyways, another advantage with the counter is you can actually go backwards. So we could say this is equal to the size of the my array, and then we could say while I is let's see, we'd be decrementing this, so it'd be 0 while I is well, it'd be greater than -1 because we start counting from 0. So -1, and now we could actually just go backwards through the array. So let's just get rid of that, and now if we run this, we should see voice key being printed out backwards. So let's recompile that, relink, and rerun, and you can see it's being printed out backwards and then forwards. So with the iterator, you can't do that. It just goes forwards through an array. And then the advantages for using iterators, basically it comes down to not having to write as much code. With the actual counters, you had to write out like my array at the counter index. So that was kind of, it's kind of like, I know it's not a lot of code, but over time when you're writing a lot of for loops, the iterators just make your life a lot easier. It is a disadvantage not being able to change what index you're at, but if you're just trying to print through sequentially through a container, then yeah, the iterators are definitely a easy way to do that, and it comes down to less code. Okay, and then one more thing we can do with iterators is if we want to make this kind of generic, we can just use this keyword called auto, and this will just detect what type of iterator we're going to be using for that container. So in this case, we're iterating through this array, and this array stores char values, so this is going to be a char iterator. So that's pretty cool. It's basically just auto detects what type of iterator you're using.
Perfect.